and welcome everybody to Flicker Effect and our spoiler-filled review of Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm David Lott. Joining me as always is Bobby Jackson.
Hello.
And Michelle Hillard.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Happy Comic-Con week. For Bobby, anyway.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited, but I do kind of miss when we all could be down there. So it's a little bittersweet, but I definitely am excited to see what kind of stuff happens this weekend, since it's the first one back in since 2020 or 2019 maybe. So
yeah, 2019.
Yeah.
Official one in the normal.
Well, yeah, you had that one in the fall. Right?
Yeah, there was the special edition one, but that one was not up to the normal standards of Comic-Con that we're used to. So this should be a nice little litmus test for how well it's back. Obviously, the tickets are sold out. So how many additional people will come through? That's kind of the question.
Right. Well, I'm happy for you that you're good to go. We will miss it, but hopefully we'll be back again sometime soon. First, for anybody wondering what took us so long to review Thor: Love and Thunder.
Gosh.
It's weird, like Marvel movies, obviously we're all huge fans. It's the kind of film that, if I can pull it off, get childcare and everything, it's a kind of movie I'm going to see opening night. We already knew that wasn't going to happen for Michelle and I because we had vacation that week with the kids, a family vacation. And we were toying with the idea of, maybe we'll go while we're on vacation, like on that Friday. But we were busy doing vacation stuff. Found, it definitely wasn't going to happen. So we had tickets to see it like that following Monday, like a week ago. And then, we get back from vacation and came down with COVID. So that kind of killed those plans. So we finally saw it last night. It was really weird walking into a new Marvel movie after it had been out for over a week. And I don't know about you, Michelle. For the most part, I don't think really anything was really truly spoiled for me in the movie. Like, I was definitely getting to the point of like scrolling through social media and like getting good at quickly scrolling past things. Like Nerdist posts in my Instagram feed and stuff. But actually, after seeing the movie, I can say nothing was actually truly spoiled, at least for me. Was it for you?
No, I'll agree. Like, I was surprised because I feel like I'd be scrolling through social media on Instagram or Twitter, and I would start to see something. I'd be like, keep going. And then, I would think maybe I saw something, but maybe I didn't see something. And then I was like, after watching the movie, I was like, nothing got spoiled for me. So, which is fine. Which is good.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
That is good. Before we get into it, Bobby, have you seen it just once or have you seen it more than that?
Bobby's
just the once. Just once.
Oh, just one time. Oh, man. I'm surprised.
Well, hey, before we get into it, I already said it at the top of the show, but I'm going to remind everyone one last time before we really dig into the review. This is going to be a spoiler-filled review. I mean, it's been out for over a week now, and there's probably a good chance you've seen it by now. But just in case, we are going to be talking about spoilers for Thor: Love and Thunder. So if you haven't seen it and you're interested, maybe go check out the movie first and then come back and watch our review after you've seen the film. So the warning is out there. Spoiler-filled review. Before we decide to go source, I actually have the Bowl of Destiny. It took, the bowl was hiding, in this messy office for a while. I recently kind of cleaned up and came across it, and here it is. And we're going to see who's going to take a crack at Thor first. The bowl. It's Michelle.
Me.
Michelle.
All right.
Michelle. All right, Michelle. And also, I mean, as always, we saw this movie together last night. I still have no idea what you think of this. I say that, and I feel like you kind of showed your hand after the movie, but I still have.
Oh, that's interesting.
We haven't specifically told each other what we think of
All
this
I
movie.
said was that I was extremely looking forward to finding out the opinion.
There was a way you said
you
things
and Bobby.
that-
I was gonna say, based on what she's saying in words, it doesn't sound like there's a tell there.
Yeah,
but
there was a way
I guess
that
in the
she-
inflection.
Yeah, there was a way she said things. That,
Okay,
I
interesting.
feel pretty confident I know her thoughts on this movie.
Okay. Okay.
So, Michelle, what'd you think of Thor?
Thor, Love and Thunder. I'm going to come out the gate hot and say I did not like that movie at all. I thought it was pretty bad, actually. I think there were some redeemable moments and some qualities that I think are good, but overall, I feel like I could solidly say that is the first really big major miss for a Marvel film for me. Yeah, it's almost like I don't really know where to begin because so much of it is so not palpable to me. It's frustrating because I like Taika Waititi and I think he usually does pretty good stuff. I will say I was mixed on Ragnarok, but on this one, I can solidly say that I think it was a huge miss, and I hope to no longer see Marvel films from Taika. I don't want that anymore. I
So you're hoping to see Star Wars films from Taika?
Star Wars stuff, I will say thus far has not been a miss for me, or even like kind of mixture. His Star Wars things have been good from what we've seen based on the episodes that he's done. But I can pretty solidly say that I hope Taika is no longer going to be doing Marvel stuff in the future. No, I did not like this movie. I did not like this Thor. I did not like any of the comedy in it. And I say that, and I know there was points where I giggled a couple of times, but overall, this is a solid, no good Marvel film for me. So we can go into more things later. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Well, I was right about what I figured you thought of the movie.
That's where I am. I thought it was a hot mess of too much Taika talking and not funny jokes.
All right. Bobby, I did draw you next.
Yeah, I had a feeling I'd go next.
Hey,
Is the bull.
It's the bull, man. It's the
Is
bull.
the bull.
Yeah. No, I just had this feeling. I kind of thought maybe I'd be up next. And, I always have to preface this by saying what my opinion of Ragnarok was, because if you've seen the show any number of times where that subject has come up, I've been very much consistent in the fact that I've always thought, and I've been in the minority in terms of the love for that particular movie. I, for one, never really cared for it that much because the comedy never really worked for me in that movie. And it wasn't necessarily the comedy in and of itself. It was always the placement to me. I always felt like the comedy cut short the drama and the parts that were in the scenes there was some seriousness going on. And so it just never set right with me. And like Michelle said, for this movie, there's still moments in Ragnarok that I enjoy and like and think are done well. But just the overall experience I had with it was not what I expected or had hoped for, especially knowing that the Hulk was going to be in that movie. So, yeah, I was disappointed in Ragnarok. So obviously I came into this one with no expectations other than probably I would feel around the same way pretty much for the most part. And I think from where I come out of this one at, I pretty much would say as long as I've had a chance to think about it since it's been a week or so, I once again seem to fall in the minority, and I actually liked this movie, which is just very weird. I had no preconceived notion that I would like this movie at all, based on the experience I had with Ragnarok. And I will say why the movie works for me. is really based on two things and two things only. Um, I really liked Natalie Portman as Jane in the movie. I honestly think that if you were to remove Jane from the movie, my level of enjoyment would go really, really down quickly. Um, and then also the main problem that I had with Ragnarok, I didn't quite have with this one because I felt like the serious moments in this movie had time to breathe. There's the normal type of Marvel humor that I expect, where there's a serious moment, then there's a beat, and then there's something funny. And I felt like this had more of that than the funny part coming directly in the middle of the serious moment. There's some of that still because it's just what he does, but I thought the parts where I felt like they needed to be serious were serious and were allowed to be serious. Like in the beginning when you have Gore and his issues that he had with the gods and his daughter. There was no humor that cut into there where it was just like, well, this is goofy. He was allowed to be serious in that moment. And there's other times like that felt right to me. And then there are times where there's somewhat quasi serious moment, but then that gets cut with humor, and so it didn't quite bother me as much because it wasn't quite as serious of a moment that I felt needed to be kind of played out and respected a little bit more. So I think those two reasons are what made me actually like this movie. I wouldn't go on record as saying I love it, but I did like it and enjoyed it. I know after I came out of the theater, I felt like, okay, I enjoyed that. I still don't like certain things that Taika does with Thor or some of the humor. Just because I liked it doesn't mean that the humor necessarily worked for me. It was just certain other elements about it that worked more for me than the parts that didn't work for me. And some of the humor is funny. Some of the things I did laugh at, like Michelle said, you giggled at some things. There's some things I genuinely laughed at or, smiled at or whatever. But I think that the other two aspects that I pointed to are what drove me more towards the liking this. And it's sort of like made me more curious as to where we would go next in this character. Because like you, Michelle, even though I come out of it liking it, I still would rather see someone else take on Thor next and see what they do with the character. My favorite Thor are the ones that are in between the Thor movies. So when you have him in Infinity War and Endgame, that Thor I like a lot, and his level of humor and whatever he's doing there. The ones that are in the last two movies can kind of like take or leave. And then there's just elements that get introduced in the movie that don't have a lot of logic to it. They just are there. You're just meant to accept it. So those kind of things I don't really care for. Sort of like how Thor is able to enchant the hammer to be able to have someone else wield it. It's not usually how it works. You're just worthy or not. You can't really tell the hammer to be able to do that. And same with like him being able to give his powers to other people. It's just weird stuff that I think is just do it for the sake of it. Looks kind of cool kind of thing. And one of the things I did like is since I come from that comic book world, I always love the idea of anyone can appear at any given time in the comics. And you get a piece of that when you have the Guardians of the Galaxy here in the beginning. And I've seen some people complaining like, well, they weren't in it enough. And I was like, it's not a Guardians movie. It was just, they wanted to see more of that adventure play out. And I was actually okay with how much they were in it, because to me, it was like, that wasn't the point. And it was just kind of a nice little crossover that they were in there. I mean, to be able to get all those actors to appear in this Thor movie for even just a few minutes they were in it for the beginning was like just kind of cool to see, just like as if I was reading a comic and there was a little bit of a crossover where Iron Man comes into a Spider-Man comic, but he's only there for like 2 panels and then he does his own thing somewhere else. So it was kind of like that feeling to me. So I really enjoyed that part of it and that aspect. And then I think the other things that I did like was just the way that Jane and Thor's chemistry to me felt more sincere in this movie than I've seen in any of the other movies that they've been together. It just felt more realistic to me in the way that they were able to act off of each other. And so I had more of an enjoyment watching the two of them together. And like I said, Jane's story just in general when she was in it, and giving Natalie Portman a little bit of a redemption as to come back and do this, as opposed to kind of like her sort of quietly exiting out of the MCU before. So it was nice to see her kind of come back and be a prominent character and do well in the role, and made me want to see more of her going forward in some sort of way if we could. So even if the next movie was more her rather than Hemsworth, I'd be okay with that. But either way, I think that I am more curious now to see what they do with this character, mostly based off of the way this movie seems to be divisive for people that are more tuned into this MCU stuff. So overall, I liked it, but didn't love it.
I mean, I would have to say, like, yeah, I think Natalie Portman as Jane Foster as Mighty Thor is probably the only highlight for me, realistically, in the whole movie. And unfortunately, Natalie Portman cannot save this film, and just because she has a good performance and the storyline in there I think is strong, does not, for me, it just doesn't make up for literally everything else. And while I agree, like, I like the idea of like having other characters and different comics kind of pop in, I get that they're kind of concluding Thor's time with the Guardians. I felt that whole scene just felt really forced. I don't know. It just didn't work for me because it just didn't seem to flow very well. It just seemed very kind of choppy. The very first one, the whole thing with the Guardians.
The Guardians.
Okay.
I just thought the whole thing was really choppy and kind of forced, and I don't know. Yeah. I'll go on, but yeah, I want to know what David. I'm really curious what David thinks because we didn't talk at all. Like, mostly we usually don't talk about films, but this one we really didn't. So. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess to set things up, kind of like you did, Bobby. I mean, yeah, when it comes to Ragnarok, I basically, I think, have always fallen in the same boat as you on that movie. I mean, I don't hate it, but I always felt like I was in the minority on that one too. I think my biggest problem with it was it felt like two different movies trying to be one movie. You know, I mean, if it had just been a movie about him on that planet with Jeff Goldblum's character and, you know, dealing him and Hulk and trying to get out or something, I would have been fine. But then you have the whole story with his sister, and it just, I don't know. It felt like that mix never quite worked.
Yeah.
So no, I've come to, like, I guess, appreciate certain things about Ragnarok, but I still don't really feel any differently about it in terms of its place in the MCU and as a Thor film. I still am not in love with that movie. I had pretty low expectations going into this. I mean, we talked about the first trailer on here, and I saw that trailer. I was like, oh God, I think all my fears are going to be realized. Like, this just looks like it's going to be a total comedy. It's going to lay into the comedy that we saw in Ragnarok, like 1,000%. Yeah. Like, oh God, this looks not good. I was not happy with what I was seeing. Yeah. And so going into this, I had pretty low expectations. Yeah, I thought this movie was trash. I will straight up say I hated this movie. I was 30, 45 minutes into it, and I seriously thought to myself, I don't want to be here. I would rather go home right now. I would be perfectly happy walking out of a Marvel film and not finishing this. That's how bad I thought this movie was. None of the humor worked. Almost none. The goats. I like the goats.
The goats were funny.
The screaming goats worked. If there's anything I laughed at in this movie, it was the stupid damn goats. It worked. I don't know why.
Especially hitting the planet too. That was the moment I was like, that was good. That was a good joke.
Yeah.
That was a good joke.
That was pretty good.
That was a good joke.
Christian Bale is always great. Gore the God Butcher I liked a lot. I thought he was deliciously dark, and just he looked cool. He did not disappoint for me at all. In fact, the opening of this movie, you know, again, I'm going into this movie pretty low expectations, and the movie opens with that, you know, the whole scene of him and his daughter, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I was already getting this glimmer of like hope of like, oh, okay, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
But then it gets to the very end of all that when he meets the god, and I was like, there's the Taika humor, you know, and then here it comes. And I mean, that was fine. Trust me, of all the humor and the problems I have with the humor in this movie, that is like the very bottom of it. Like, there was not, I mean, you know, Michelle, you sat right next to me. I mean, I barely reacted to any comedy in this film. It just didn't work for me.
I think the few things that we giggled on together. And the sad part is I couldn't even literally sit here and tell you what they were. They were so forgettable.
I mean, really, it was the goats. I think the only things I really reacted to were those two damn goats.
They were so forgettable.
But most of it, yeah. Like, I went through the entire MCU list today because this is the 29th film. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. 29th MCU film. Wow. I went through the entire list today just to make sure I'm not crazy. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, this is easily the worst movie in the MCU. It's not even close. Like, I will probably never, ever watch this movie ever again. Like, that's how bad it is. It's that bad.
Not good.
And I mean, hey, I've tried to avoid spoilers, and now, of course, since I watched it, I did a little, you know, scrolling through Twitter today, even though now it's been over a week. And I think we're well into that phase of now you have, I guess so many people have been pretty unhappy about it. But then there's definitely a lot of tweets I came across today of people are like, you guys in 5 years will come back and, you know, realize this was actually a really good film. And I'm like, hey, I'll say this. And Bobby, you enjoyed the movie for the most part. Like, hey, if this movie works for you, more power to you. I, you know, all I can say is it is not for me. If this is the direction that Marvel films will continue to go in, I am good with phases 1, 2, and 3 and the Infinity Saga. I had a great time. I'm out. Like, this, I did not like this movie almost at all. Like, and even just Thor, like what you do with the character of Thor, you make him this kind of bumbling buffoon idiot. Like, oh God, so many things. This movie is so, in my opinion, so incredibly bad. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it after I walked out of the movie theater last night. I'm just like, wow, like, this guy's gonna make a Star Wars movie? Like, like, yeah, he's directed some, you know, one episode or a couple episodes of Mandalorian?
2.
And I mean, I've enjoyed them. And I am not a Taika hater. Like, I have definitely loved some stuff that he has done. And then there's other things I'm not as big of a fan of. Right. And this, like, it definitely gives me pause to go, wow, apparently the next Star Wars film we're going to get is from this director. And it makes me go, my God, what is happening? Like, yeah, like you guys have already said and agreed, like, you know, if there's going to be another individual Thor film, I hope to God they find a new director.
Oh, please God.
I mean, even the fact that I didn't like this movie aside, he's now directed 2 of them. It would be nice to have somebody else move in. And, you know, it's obvious that the Thor franchise has not been like Guardians of the Galaxy, where that is a James Gunn thing. And, you know, it's going to be a trilogy of James Gunn films, and that's it. Fine. But we've already had different directors make Thor films in the past, Kenneth Branagh and Alan Taylor, and now 2 Taika films. If indeed we're going to get another one, the fact that I hated this movie aside, I hope. I was probably already thinking before seeing this movie, hey, I hope they find a new director for another Thor movie. But yeah, I mean, I don't know where to go from there, but I'm not a fan.
No, like, yeah. I'm with you. Like, I liked Christian Bale. I liked the character of Gore. And there are some things that worked for me that actually, Bobby, you said that didn't work for you. And I actually kind of, in a weird little way.
I wonder if you're going to say something similar that actually I did enjoy.
I actually enjoyed when Thor gave the kids the powers to beat up on the bad guys, to beat up on the shadow creatures. I actually really enjoyed that part. Like, I guess on one side you could look at that scene and you can watch it and you can be like, oh, we're encouraging children and violence, and then, but my thing is, they're Asgardians.
Most of them.
Not right, but they not that like Asgardians are like bloodthirsty, but it's like they're battle warriors. Like that's what they do, you know? And like like for Thor to give the kids the powers just for long enough for them to just fight off scary monsters, that worked for me. I thought that was really cool, and I know that's a departure from the comics for him to be able to do that, but like it worked. Like I was down with it. I thought that was actually one of the really, really good scenes. I actually enjoyed that scene a lot. I mean, I would say anything with Natalie Portman or Christian Bale in it, any of those scenes, all of those scenes seem to play out really well, I think. You know, like them fighting Gore on that one planet when they had Valkyrie with them and Valkyrie gets injured, and then, you know, that whole scene, like I think, worked really well for me too.
The look of the black and white, basically.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
basically
was cool.
Black and white was pretty cool.
That was really cool. And then it was really just the lightning bolt and Mjolnir and Stormbreaker that were in color. Or when, you know, I guess Mighty Thor lit up Mjolnir a little bit and kind of illuminated her face a little bit to kind of go through. But like that was cool. I like the juxtaposition of the color and the dark and the black and white, and that whole scene was great. I thought the major battle basically at the end with the kids was really great. Like I really enjoyed all of that stuff. Honestly, that was good to me. It was really just all the other stuff kind of in between. It just was not. Oh no! And the whole scene in the god place with all the gods and Zeus, the Zeus situation. I can't even like. I almost don't want to dump into it. That was just the hottest mess.
Sorry, what were you going to say, Bobby?
Just that. So I didn't say that I didn't like that scene. I actually did like it. I just what confounds me is the introduction of how he's able to do something
that kind of
like
power.
that. Yeah, where he's never.
Like he said,
and not even like well versed in like Thor, Marvel, like history, but I think I thought the same thing. Like it happened, and I was like, should he be able to do this? But the scene worked. Like I enjoyed the scene. But
and that's how I felt about the Jane thing. It's like, where can you just whisper to the hammer and enchant it in that way? It's like the way that they present it, I don't care for.
It's very
but
convenient.
The effect of what happens, I like. Like I like the kids, and I like that Thor or that Jane was able to possess the hammer and have the powers of Thor. So I like the end result. I just the way we go about it was like, huh? Like how does that work again?
All I could think is that it's got to be something like a power that was passed down to him from Odin, and I guess he's just never really known that he could do it, or that he's ever had to really utilize that kind of power. Because I mean, basically, Odin enchants Mjolnir to be what he does, you know, to only go to those who are worthy. So I mean, I guess at some point it gets passed down into Thor at some point in all of this, but that never really gets explained. I guess that's just the assumption that I'm under. It is all really convenient that he can do it. It is. It's totally convenient, but
I was gonna ask you guys, like, and I, you know, maybe I just am not remembering things well, but is it kind of a retcon, the fact that there was apparently a time period where they were able to live together for so long and be in like this long relationship? Like, considering what we know about the timeline of films, or am I wrong about that? Like,
I'm gonna assume it's somewhere between the second Thor and the first Avengers.
Bobby, have you thought about that at all? Or
I mean, I thought about it, but I figure if they've been together as a couple since the end of the first Thor movie, there's probably a decent amount of time. A lot of that could have happened, and
but even
between the first Thor movie and the end of the second one.
But when he shows up in Thor: Dark World, I mean, it's definitely treated like, hey, where have you been?
Yeah, they hadn't been together between the first and the second.
Yeah,
but I think it's from the second to Avengers is when they're together, and then they break up, and then because then he even says like, you know, when because I literally just watched Avengers a few weeks ago. He even says like asking about like, you know, is Jane safe, and they're like, yeah, and they're like,
Yeah, they
Dr.
sent her
Foster is
Yeah, I
somewhere
remember
safe,
that.
blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. And he was like, okay. And it was mostly like, it was already known at that point they were no longer together. So at some point between Dark World and Avengers.
I don't know. It was just
That
something I kind
situation
of bumped
happened?
on. I'm like, wait, when would all of this have happened? But I mean,
I
obviously
thought
we don't see everything that happens with these characters.
Right.
Like, it's not like we see their entire existence just in these films. I get that, but still, I don't know. It caught me.
Do you want to know what else I bumped on? On top of that, in that whole scene, was just seeing like Mjolnir just like casually like laying against her on the couch and like just kind of like randomly being in different places, but like next to Jane and like I don't know. It was really weird to me. I'm like, why would Mjolnir just be like leaning against Jane? She couldn't freaking move then. What was he doing? Keeping her captive on the couch? The hell? Like it was just weird. I was just like, I don't understand why Mjolnir would just be randomly hanging out with them all the time if she can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Anyways,
You guys, sort of to piggyback off that, one of the things that I think, as far as the humor did work for me and got me to laugh a couple times, were the Mjolnir and the I forget what he calls this other weapon.
Stormbreaker.
Yeah, Stormbreaker. That
Yeah.
The Stormbreaker, like easing into shots. Like,
Yeah.
it's
that was
upset.
cute. That
kind
was
of
cute.
funny, yeah.
That was
Oh,
cute. There's something I did enjoy. That was actually pretty cute. Is the whole like Stormbreaker like being upset and
Yeah,
jealous.
jealous
Like
of
that was
Mjolnir.
kind of cute.
That was
I
kinda
was
funny.
like, this is kind of cute.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
My phone
Yeah.
named is Stormbreaker.
It is.
Really? Oh, that's funny. That's kind of cool.
For
But-
connect people's Bluetooth, they're like, Stormbreaker has joined. I'm like,
But to get back to something Michelle said, as far as one of the scenes that just absolutely didn't work, which was the place where all the gods gathered at. I forget what it's called. It has a name, but
Yeah, it
can't
has a name. I
remember.
know.
I can easily see why most people didn't like that scene. I think for me, it was neither here nor there. I don't think it rubbed me the wrong way, but I also didn't recall like laughing or overall enjoying it per se either. But it didn't necessarily bother me. And what Russell Crowe was doing as Zeus, yeah, again, it didn't bother me, but I can see why some people would be like, "Oh, it's just trash," you know. So it's weird. I like your guys' opinion of the movie. I'm like, yeah, I get it because I know how I felt about Ragnarok. So I don't dispute anyone's things and issues that they say about this movie because I know I have felt a lot of strong ways about Ragnarok, and so I see it. But at the same time, I just can't deny that I didn't come out of it smiling a little bit based on some of the stuff that in there that did work for me. So, yeah, I just think that scene was, I don't know, maybe a waste of time, but at the same time, it didn't altogether bother me. So I'm curious, since Michelle mentioned how she felt, how did it hit you, David?
I mean, in the context of how bad so much of this movie was, like that wasn't the worst thing for me. I mean,
no, not
like
the worst.
I didn't like it, but it was just kind of more of the same of just stuff I wasn't enjoying. I don't know how to even put it. Like I just wasn't enjoying the movie, and that scene also I didn't really care for. I mean, yeah, in a way I'm kind of with you, Bobby. It's kind of neither here nor there. It was Russell Crowe's Zeus, fine. Like I didn't hate him. Like he's just whatever. Like you know the scenes coming up, and of course I and probably like any of us are just looking at all the various characters. I'm like, who's this person? Who's this person? It's just,
Yeah.
like, and
Yeah, that was enjoyable.
but yeah, I didn't. It's definitely not my least favorite thing about the movie, but no, I didn't particularly like it either. I mean, the whole thing with, and I'm already forgetting his name, the Rock guy, Taika's character,
Korg?
Korg.
Korg.
I was gonna say Korg, and I thought I was wrong. Him losing his body, and he's just a face, and then
So
the
ridiculous.
face on the back of Valkyrie's head, and I'm just like, oh god, I hate this movie so very much.
I know.
Like just stuff like that. Just oh god, just did not work for me at all. But yeah, that scene, I don't know, kind of
like,
mostly indifferent too, I guess.
I wouldn't say it's the worst, but it's definitely not. It was not a good scene, and the way the whole thing played out just wasn't good. But it's like I'm watching Russell Crowe walk around in, it's Greek mythology, Zeus, and seeing him in kind of a Greek god costume, and thinking back to Gladiator when he was a Roman gladiator, and the peak years, and I'm just like, oh, how the mighty have fallen. I mean, I'm watching this scene going, oh my God, like, this man was like, this movie is not, it's just not good. And there's just a lot of it that I just don't understand the thought process behind. But like, yeah, I think for me, one big thing was honestly the whole Guardians thing. And it wasn't that he was hanging out with the Guardians. It was mostly that I just felt like it was just kind of thrown in their scenes. And they just felt very forced. Like, oh, we've got to do these scenes with them. It just didn't fit to me at all in the scheme of the... It just didn't work for me. I was just kind of like, slapdash this together. And it felt like it. Like, and it shows. Like, it just didn't work at all for me. And then, yeah, I mean, I could just... I
mean, yeah, I definitely don't fall into the camp of people that are like, oh, the Guardians should have been in this more. I mean, they were in it just as much as I expected.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a Thor movie.
Exactly.
Like, sure. I mean, I was watching the kind of quick montage recap of what they've been up to and thinking, oh, that would make a great, like, television series or something, Like, basically the adventures of Guardians with Thor would be... I would watch that. Like, but... we get a kind of quick recap, and yeah, I expected them to not be in it much, and then they're gone, and fine. I don't know. That didn't really bug me. I mean,
think maybe it was just like the whole battle with them with the Birdmen and that.
I mean, yeah, that was just more of Thor just being silly, which is what I don't like. I mean, and
I don't like silly Thor.
When I think about the Thor we have seen throughout the MCU, I mean, yeah, we get to a point in Endgame where, yeah, we get that Thor, the fat Thor in Endgame, which was fine in that film. It was fun in that movie. It worked. And I wish that would have been the most we had gotten of a silly, stupid Thor.
And that Thor was riding the back of Ragnarok. So for me, it's still more Thor that I'm not a big fan of.
Yeah, I really don't mind humor in Marvel movies. Like, I mean, Marvel has done a mostly pretty impeccable job of finding that great balance of like comic book action, some humor, not being just the total like dark kind of comic book films like we get from DC movies, which many of those I like very much. But, Marvel's done a really great job of finding that great balance. And now it feels like with movies like Ragnarok and then this even tenfold is like really just laying into like, man, how funny, silly can we make this? Like, oh, people enjoy this kind of more humorous Thor. Let's just give them what they want.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying this like I think, oh man, all Marvel movies are going to do this kind of thing. I don't think that at all. I mean, we just got Doctor Strange, which I enjoyed quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, all the different Marvel movies are going to continue to be different in their own ways. But I really like Thor. And it bums me out to see that it has gone full on in this direction. I don't enjoy it.
Well, so. I will say to that Ragnarok was written by someone else and directed by Taika.
Right.
Taika wrote Love and Thunder and directed. So I would say as long as Thor is under the eye of Taika, then yeah, we'll get more of this Thor. But I don't know that I would think that would be the case if someone else takes on the character.
I agree. I don't think so either.
Yeah, so I'm not too worried about Thor being this way going forward unless Taika continues on with the character and having him that way.
Oh, and if he did, I won't even see it. Like, yeah. It would be the first Marvel movie I will probably just sit back and watch the train wreck from afar. And unless, hey, I mean, if everyone is like, oh my God, no, he did it, this is fantastic, then okay, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt and I'll go check it out. But no, if he directed another one, I'm good. I won't even bother watching it.
The only reason why I will is because I need to see the payoff of Hercules versus Thor. Those two mythological figures going against each other. I know it would be silly in his hands, but I still would want to see it. And though I am not on the Ted Lasso train, I know well enough to know who that actor is that's playing him and how much praise he gets from that show. So I would want to see what he does with that character.
And speaking of that real quick,
Yeah.
I have spent 2 weeks hearing, oh my God, the mid-credit scene gets like more of a reaction than I've seen in a long time for a mid-credit scene. Or maybe I'm getting that kind of paraphrasing wrong. I feel like there's been a lot of excitement
Immortals had a good one.
the mid-credit scene for this movie. So I was pretty pumped. I was like, all right, I'm hating this movie. I'm sitting through this movie going, this is terrible. I really hate almost
Save
everything
it.
about this. But I really can't wait to see this mid-credit scene. And the mid-credit scene comes, and I'm like, really? That's what everybody's been so fucking excited about? Like I was like, wow, like I just can't win. Because I watched it and I was like, yeah, sure, I love Ted Lasso and I like that actor quite a bit. Yeah, I don't remember his name.
Brett Goldstein.
Brett Goldstein. He's great. But I just watched it and went, that's the mid-credit scene everyone's been pumped about. I was really like, oh, okay, are we going to get the kind of scene that's like, all right, really pointing us in a direction in the greater MCU, or where are we going with this?
Right.
Like, what's going on? You know, Phase 4 seems like it's kind of like, whatever. And that's fine. Like, but I don't know. I watched that too, and I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, I think for the scene itself, it was whatever. It was a toss away scene. The only highlight of it was literally just the reveal of Brett Goldstein as Hercules. That was, oh hey, Brett Goldstein.
And I think that's why everybody's been talking about it.
The rest of the scene was total crap. And honestly, even the after credit scene, I was like, well, okay, on one side, super cool that they got Idris to come back to play that role for just a hot second. Awesome. Super cool. Very exciting. I liked that. But for the fact that it's like, I guess people were like, so she made it to Valhalla. I was like, I feel like that was pretty obvious when she turned to gold dust and floated away at her death. Yeah, she went to Valhalla. That's what Odin did. Like, that's what happens. They turn to gold dust and they go to Valhalla. So yeah, that's where she went. And so I just don't understand what the depth of that scene is. Like, is there more about Jane Foster in Valhalla that she does moving forward? I don't know. Maybe the comics reveal something. I don't know. I was just kind of like, what was the point of the scene? Just to get Idris on it for a hot second? Was that the point? Just so we could say, we got Idris in for a second.
I don't know if I don't. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You started.
I mean, I guess I don't think of it like, oh, what's fun about this scene? So we got Idris Elba to come back. Cool. Like, I mean, I thought it was just like, oh, here's a glimpse of Valhalla, and here she is. And if anything, I was like, it just seemed kind of like a quick, abrupt end to it. But I don't know. I was kind of indifferent about the end credit scene that we're talking about. If anything, I get it more than the mid credits one. Like, but
I think that I didn't hear people talk too much about the end credit scene. It was all the mid credit scene that everyone was a buzz about. But my take on the end credit was just that it was to show that, at least by the way it ended, and David, you said it was abrupt, I got the feeling that it was more of like Heimdall was welcoming Jane to Valhalla, and she didn't quite look like she knew if she was ready to be there yet. And so I think that's sort of where it's supposed to leave us, in the sense of questioning, is she going to stay in Valhalla, or is there some other path for her? And I wonder if they're going to take inspiration from the comics there. That's all I'll say about that.
But I also, like, we get a mid and post credit scene in like every Marvel movie now, and there's been so many of them. I feel like they're just thrown around now. Like, do they really have a plan with this? Like, for instance, the Brett Goldstein thing. I mean, he has outright said, and I believe, but the way he said the quote, he has outright said, look, I'm not being coy here. I have absolutely no idea if there's an actual plan for me. Like, for all I know, that was a one-off scene,
no idea.
and I will never be in a Marvel movie again. But, you would think if that was like, we're casting you in this role, and I mean, I'm sure maybe there's a contract thing there, like, okay, well, we'll use you if we want to because we can, but it just seems like I wouldn't be shocked if at this point, I feel like when they do post-credit scene and mid-credit scenes now in Marvel movies, it's just like, oh, this will be a cool thing that we could tease, but will they ever actually do anything with it? I don't know.
I always assume that the idea for certain things like this one, in my sense, is that one of two ways. It could end up being this Hercules Disney Plus series that shows him before this point in time, and then we'll get some sort of future movie with the two of them together. Or it's a way to just say, here's something that's possible. How will audiences respond to it? And to see if we should go forward and pay this off, as opposed to, because I can't honestly think of something that they've done so far that's of some importance that they haven't come back around to and tied off at some point.
Right.
So there's obviously the ones that are just throwaway that just mean nothing. Like,
yeah, they're just humorous kind of.
Yeah, they're just humorous things.
Like,
but when it's ones that kind of tie into something, I have yet to see them not pay it off somewhere, somehow. And the only time that they haven't so far yet is with Phase 4 stuff. But that's because there's a reason, and they're obviously getting to those payoffs at some point.
Right. Like, I'm still waiting for the payoff of the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Adam.
Which is coming in the next movie.
Right. So it's like that. I feel like, man, we've been waiting forever for that one. But I mean,
hey, that's Marvel, or that's Disney and James Gunn's fault for
right.
that whole
it's
fallout
Disney
that they
and
had.
James
that
Gunn and COVID, and it's like the list goes on as to why that's taken so long for that to pay off. But it's I don't know. You know what else really bums me out is I'm bummed with Valkyrie, and hear me out through the whole thought process. I feel like they want to give Valkyrie more depth and more to her storyline, and they just like keep chopping her off at the knees in a way. You know, it's like you have this really great scene between her and Korg on the ship at one point, and they're talking about, you know, what they want out of life, and it's like, I don't know. I feel like they want to give her more, but they're just almost like afraid to give her more as far as like, not like she needs a love interest per se, but just like a future moving forward. She seems to be kind of not interested in connecting herself too much to anything. Like, you know, she's King Valkyrie, and she's kind of bored of being king because she's likes having action in her life, you know, and I don't know. It's frustrating because I think that the idea and the character of Valkyrie is really cool, but I feel like they don't project her forward with anything really, which sucks. It's like I feel like it's a missed opportunity.
Right. I
you know, that's another thing. That's another thing I bumped on. I was like, man, yes, you're getting up there, but you're just not getting over the edge with her, and it just kind of pisses me off.
Do you ever, Bobby or Michelle, you guys ever wondered too if is as good of a job as Marvel has done with like, let's pull things straight from the comics and the look of these characters straight from the comics, you know? For the most part, I think they've done a very good job of this. Like, it does appear that a lot of this movie, different aspects of the storyline are pulled straight from Thor comics. Maybe to a fault. Like if it's almost just, we're going too far out of our way to just go, well, what have the comics done? And how can I use this so that I can pull things from the comics, or looks of characters? Like, you know, his costume with the gold and blue, and it's whatever.
It looks
if anything, it bummed me out because like he had this really great look with the cape that's like a coat like snow look he had, which he wore for like all of like 5 minutes in this movie.
That one looked really cool.
And I'm like, oh, that looks so badass. Like, why is he in this silly plasticky looking thing most of this movie? It looked fake on screen. Like,
it looked so fake.
It did not look like this metal like
I know.
armor he was wearing. Like, there's these close-up shots of it, and I'm just like, oh, it looks like cosplay. Like,
yeah, like I'm with you. Yeah, like the whole like battle scene of them in Valhalla, and he's in this like winter gear, you know, this Norwegian-esque Viking winter gear. It looked cool. And then he was in this cheap plastic crap the rest of the film. Like, it was cheap plastic. It looked like Mama's curtains were his cape. Like, it just didn't work at all. And I was like, what is happening?
And then
with Thor?
I mean, maybe I missed a meaning behind this, so please correct me if I missed something. But like, you know, he's at a distance and he can see something's going on, and Mjolnir looks like Mjolnir's there, and he can't see her yet as Mighty Thor. And then he suddenly has this helmet mask on, and then like it comes off, and that was it. Like, what was the point of that? Like, him putting that thing on, and
that's from the comics, is the cool helmet.
I mean,
but it's like he put it on and then it was right back off. What was the point?
But I didn't even understand why.
Was he just trying to do it to show up because the way Jane was looking as her Thor, as Mighty Thor, because she had a helmet on?
She had a helmet on, so he wanted to have one on too?
He had to have a helmet, and he had to make his wings even bigger because it's an ego thing?
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I have a lot of issues with costuming.
That's why he put that
sounds really
costume
stupid,
on in the first place. Once he did see her, that gaudy one that he puts on, it was because she was wearing his sort of vibe, and he just wanted to be like,
this looks
I'm
bigger
Thor.
and better.
Yeah, and so he just, yeah,
it didn't work.
No, it doesn't work. But yeah, that's what they were
like,
going for.
There was a scene of him talking to Valkyrie, and like Valkyrie's costume looks so cool. It's like leather. And, like, it just looks really authentic and worn in and real. And he's standing next to her, and he just looks plasticky and shiny. And, like, velour curtain drapes is his cape. And, like, I was like, what the hell happened here? Like, it just doesn't... Yeah. It doesn't work. And I don't like this Thor. And I don't like the comedy in this.
The other thing I was going to say is I wish... this whole like new Asgard had been really just kind of kept to like Endgame, and then post that, like the Asgardians will have found somewhere else to build a new Asgard, I guess.
So like cruise ships and it's a tourist
destination. Because now, like of course laying into the humor
cheesy.
of it, like, oh, it's a tourist destination. Right. There's cruise ships everywhere, and we do the whole like theater scene again, which...
it was stupid in Ragnarok, and it was stupid in this.
I mean, at least in Ragnarok, it was like, okay, this is kind of funny. Oh, look, Matt Damon's in this. Like, it definitely worked for me much more in Ragnarok than it did in this. This, it's like, it's basically an excuse to do it again. Like, even though it's silly and kind of stupid. And I've heard the argument of like, isn't it kind of in poor taste of like the ice cream shop is called like the Infinity Gauntlet? Like, that would be a terrible thing to name it. Like this, that is the cause of like half of the population of the universe disappearing. Like, why would you call this an ice cream shop?
It's like, not even funny. It's funny because I'm laughing because it's so bad.
Yeah,
it's not even in funny.
I mean, this is nitpicky stuff now, but
no, like it's funny because like the actors, they have that whole scene, you know, and they had what's her name come in as Hela, and that scene kind of goes down. I thought that was really stupid, but what did work was actually the whole like. Them after the children were stolen, they're in like the city hall.
See, like I hated this moment you're about to bring up.
And then Matt Damon's like, I didn't hear no, and they walk off, and I was like, okay, that was kind of funny.
So yeah, I that whole thing, like them walking up and like, hey, we think we need to do this, and I'm like, God, really? Are we just really laying into the whole Matt Damon of this? Like, I hated that scene.
Part. I actually thought was funny because they look at, he's like, I didn't hear a no, and they're off. I was like. Yeah. That was very true, like mocking thespian thing. Mm-hmm. That I thought was funny, but the rest of it was crap.
Not for me, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think I'd fall maybe more in line with Michelle on that one, only just because of the humor in it. To me, was that this falls right in line with someone wanting to use a recent tragedy to make some sort of play
Right.
out of it or something. And so
Right.
it was like, yep, that would be how this character would probably want to do and get right on it too, as soon as it had happened. And it's brainstorming these ideas. So I think I did smile at it just because of the idea of it, like how opportunistic it seemed. And yeah.
Okay.
And I figure with Matt Damon, you don't just use that guy once, right? You got to squeeze him in for a second scene.
Yeah, squeeze a little juice out of Matt.
Yeah,
Get a little of that Damon juice in there. So what worked? What worked was Christian Bale, Natalie Portman, the Goats, Stormbreaker, and
the kids. Yeah.
the kids scene. That battle scene was really
The
good.
kids battle scene, but then there's things like, oh, when we first see him when they're like doing the like FaceTime or whatever you want to call that, and he's like, oh, my name's Axel now, and I'm like, that was like, ugh.
That
This is
you know
stupid.
what? Honestly, it really that scene sucks. That part I hate that he's like, oh, my name's Axel now. He's like, but your father named you this cool Asgardian thing. Can you honor your father? And he's like, no, my name's Axel. I was like, that's really stupid.
It was, it was a bad, stupid joke.
It was a really stupid joke. And I will say, those Asgardian parents seemed pretty effing chill when their children were stolen and taken off to a dark realm. I was kind of like, they're not really panicking about this. They're kind of pretty chill about it. Like, oh, I guess our kids are stolen. Thor will figure it out. It's fine.
I like the one argument I've seen of like, okay, so Gord the God Butcher, thinks that gods are just selfish and that don't care about anybody else. So I will steal these kids so that a god will be
Enticed
to come help these kids.
It makes no sense.
Like, it's not something I bumped on while watching it, but I saw that after the fact, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of true.
It's so funny. I was thinking at one point, it was somewhere around probably like the second scene when Thor, like, you know, mind melds with Axel and gets in the cage with them and he's talking to them. And I'm thinking, so he's entrapped them to get the god to care enough to come after them,
Right.
but he thinks gods don't care. And I was thinking in the theater going, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, his whole point is this. And I kind of just let it go because I'm like, this movie's shit already. I might as well just let it go. And I just went with it because I was like, I can go on. I'm sorry. Anyways, there are a few things that are good, but if I look at the film as a whole, to me, this film is not good.
It's fair.
Regardless of what is good.
I mean, it'd be remiss of us to not talk a little bit about one other thing in the movie before we get out of here. What did you think of title Love and Thunder?
Like the title, or what the meaning behind the title?
What the meaning
like,
behind the title was, the last part where Gor's daughter comes back and now Thor is the caregiver of this young girl, the father figure, as it were.
Uncle Thor.
Michelle, what do you think of it?
You know, when one aspect I was watching that scene and I was thinking, okay, I do like this Thor that has a greater purpose other than himself, which he has had basically the last 8 years. He's only had to care about himself. And it's nice to see that he cares about something other than himself. And I think that was really nice. But as a whole, I think it's interesting that he would go through this entire situation and then just accept Gor's daughter. And yet, it's fine. If anything, it'll be interesting when she becomes a teenager and she's like, so you just let my dad die after you battled him. I feel like that's going to come back to bite him in the ass later. Teenagers suck, and that's going to be a shit show. I don't know. I guess I'm mixed on it in a way. But I will say the thing that I think is cool as a whole is that they had Chris Hemsworth's daughter actually play her in the role. Thought that was kind of cute.
Right.
That was sweet. I don't know. I think it's interesting, but yeah.
Where do you fall on it, David?
I don't know. It's fine. Like, I didn't find it like uber touching or anything. Like, oh, that's so nice. Like, he took his daughter. Like, I don't know. Maybe I was just so turned off by the whole film by that point. Like, there was no saving it for me. You know, sure. I mean, if there's anything that works in this movie, it's the more serious moments. And yeah, there's a part of me that's like, oh, here's another guy who's been terrible this entire film, and he's kind of redeemed at the end, like. But I mean, yeah, it's not like they're just going to go, no, screw your child. Like, she'll just have to go survive on her own. We're leaving her to be, you know.
Right. They're trying to convince him to not basically in the world.
So,
of course, they're going to say anything to try to not have that happen.
I mean, you know, that very final scene of like they're living in what looks like an RV or something. And, you know, they jump out and they're going to like, you know, attack these people. And the look of that and his his kind of dynamic with the girl just feels more of this kind of same kind of Thor that I'm like, it's not, even though, yeah, it's great that he's like taking care of this kid, but it's still this kind of more humorous, like Thor that I am not a huge fan of. I don't know. It's a complicated answer to your question. I'm kind of whatever about it.
Yeah.
Like you,
I think in the moment it was fine, but even within the moment, I couldn't help but start to think of what that meant for the future. And I just don't want to see the kid tagging along with Thor.
Right.
And
that too.
Or anything going forward. So in the moment, I could see how it works, but I don't want to see that dynamic, that the two of them in further adventures going forward. So, yeah.
Well, anything else before we wrap up?
I was just gonna say my quick thought on that was that like I don't necessarily want to see Thor, and I guess they're calling her Love. I guess.
I mean, I don't know calling her that, but like they're not calling him Thunder,
right?
Like,
right, but they never really gave her a name, and Gore just kept saying, "You'll take care of my love." I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, the child. No, I don't really want to see the child and Thor continue on adventures and her get older and stuff. I don't know how it'll work out, but the only other thought I have to counter that would be like the idea of like Ant-Man and his daughter. And his daughter is growing up and she kind of starts to take the mantle, I know, in the comics and doing things with him and Wasp. And that's a dynamic that does seem to work out. So I don't know, like there is a chance that it could work out, and maybe she'll carve her own path and do her own thing after she goes through teenagerhood, and maybe she'll have a rebellious thing where she hates Thor, and like I was saying, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see, but yeah, part of me is like, I don't really want to see them hanging out and battling together.
Right. Yeah.
Necessarily.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap things up. As always, we'd love to hear back from everyone listening, watching. What did you think of Thor Love and Thunder? You can leave any comments or questions down below here on YouTube. Make sure to also like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified whenever we post any videos or maybe go live in the future. We are also on Instagram and Twitter at Flickr_effect. You can find us there. With that, I'm David Lott.
I'm Bobby Jackson.
And I'm Michelle Hillard.
Thanks for listening and watching.